Hey everybody, it's Car Ray Rob. I'm Ray.
I'm Rob.
Today we're giving you our before and after movie review for Marvel's Spider-Man Homecoming. I'm oddly excited for this movie. I didn't think I would be.
Yeah, I'm more excited than I thought I would be. The first trailer sold me, but I'm still on the fence. This is the second time they've rebooted this franchise.
Sixth movie.
Yeah, sixth movie total.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I don't know, there's still a lot that can go wrong here.
Can this feel different? They're trying the high school thing, like really supposed to be diving into this being a high school movie. Yeah, the other movies kind of had parts that took place in high school, but I think like the running joke throughout the internet's always been like 30-year-olds playing high schoolers, and this is actually real high schoolers.
They're not doing it as an origin story.
Right.
So I think that's also going to help. I think the high school aspect of it may still make it feel a little origin-y because he's so young.
Right.
But I think overall, I'm looking forward to the feel that I'm hopeful that they're going to cultivate in this movie.
Yeah, I think one thing that's really got me hooked into maybe this movie feeling different is as soon as we met Tom Holland as Spider-Man in Civil War.
Yeah.
I thought he had some really great scenes. I thought he kind of popped in all his scenes. And I kind of was like, I might be buying into this guy, and I think I am. I think I like what I've seen from the trailers. I think I really want to see what his iteration of Spider-Man's going to be.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a solid choice for the character. As you said, doing somebody that's actually age-appropriate, I think it's going to be a big deal for it. And you're right. The way he melded with the other characters in Civil War, I thought it was a great way to intro his character as opposed to doing like a origin movie again. So I think that was really smart on Marvel's part, and I think all of that does make me more excited to watch this movie.
Let's see if they can avoid some of the pitfalls. Maybe not too much RDJ would be a good thing. Let's let this be Spider-Man's story, but let's see if they do it.
Let's see what we got.
All right, we're back, and I will say I liked it. Don't know if it lived up to my expectations. I think that it was good, but it wasn't the home run I thought it could be.
It's hard to say where my expectations really lied. I kept them pretty low. Third iteration, second reboot, you're always going to have those reservations as to how it's actually going to end up being, even with Marvel's involvement. And, good stuff, bad stuff, but overall, pretty good. I think I had fun with it.
All right, Rob, well, let's talk about some things, though, that did work. Maybe that did meet our expectations. And for me, one definitely was Tom Holland. I still thought he brought everything to the story that I wanted him to do. I feel like he popped in a lot of scenes. I thought his energy was always pretty good.
If you look at the past two actors, Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, both of them, I think, did certain things well. And then there were certain things that, again, they kind of just fell flat on. Tobey Maguire played the Peter Parker character a little bit more cartoonish at times, where I felt like Andrew Garfield went for the more realistic aspect. Andrew Garfield also kind of ventured into the brooding side a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I think Tom Holland did a really good job of playing just almost an innocent version of Peter Parker. Like, he still had some of the sarcasm, some of the quick wit, but ultimately he's a kid, and he acted like a kid, and I thought that really worked.
You could tell Peter Parker was having fun being Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Like, it almost was like it was a game and something, he was just having a lot of fun with it. I thought Tom Holland did a great job, I think, of demonstrating that in that exuberance he had for this newfound power he's bestowed upon him.
Yeah, and I think one way that they were able to kind of keep some of the brooding out of it was they really did not go over any of the quote-unquote Uncle Ben death, which would have come in an origin story. So I think because of that, they alluded to it a couple of times, so you could tell there was a gravity behind the scenes.
There,
but not something that was really on the forefront. And because of that, they were able to keep it, I think, a lot more fun. Well, and I think they did some really great things with some of the supporting cast. Ned specifically really sticks out in my mind.
Best friend of Peter, the guy in the chair.
Yeah.
Fanboy of Spider-Man. Kind of unique take on the best friend character.
Sure.
Finds out Peter Parker was Spider-Man pretty early in the movie.
Yeah. It's actually one of the funniest scenes, I feel like, in the whole movie.
They set it up with him building that Death Star.
Yeah.
That was a surprise for me in a good way. He was a lot stronger, a lot funnier than I thought he would be.
Yeah, and I think he really did kind of inject the high school aspect of it into the movie, more so than probably anybody else or anything else in this movie.
Yeah, I think if we say Ned works as a best friend, I think a lot of the other high school stuff, I don't want to say it didn't work, because I actually just wanted more of it.
Yeah.
So I think I would say maybe it didn't work because I don't think they devoted enough attention to it. I mean, they really sold this movie on being the high school version of Spider-Man. And I just feel like they didn't give us enough of that.
When they were kind of early on talks about it, and you saw the trailer and stuff, you kind of get that John Hughes kind of feel for it, and you could tell there were homages to that throughout the movie at different times. But overall, that's kind of all it felt like. It felt kind of like this thin facade over a superhero movie.
Right.
Instead of taking a John Hughes movie and a superhero movie and melding them together, not enough meld.
Yeah, not enough. I mean, the movie's called Spider-Man Homecoming, and he goes to the homecoming dance, but he's there for literally 2 seconds, and then he leaves.
High school party.
He's there for like 3 seconds, and then he leaves. Like, literally that long. So it's like, you have these really great opportunities to make it, to dive into that world of high school movie, like show this awkwardness, talking to girls or whatever, dealing with his bully friends. They kind of just pass on all those opportunities.
Yeah, well, and even his balancing of Spider-Man in high school life. I feel like Spider-Man 2 did a really good job of exploring Peter Parker balancing college and Spider-Man, and I think they could have done a lot more of that in this movie to maybe kind of bump up that high school feel a little bit more, and just the realistic aspect of his life at that point.
Yeah, because really in this movie, the route they kind of take is that he just doesn't want to. In some ways, he doesn't want to be Peter Parker. Like, he doesn't want to go to school. He doesn't. It's boring now, and it doesn't grab his attention. It's not interesting anymore. So he doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to be the little kid anymore. He wants to find excuses not to go to these competitions that are for these teams he's on. It says he quit marching band or something. So it's like, he didn't want to be a kid anymore, and so it's like, you can't have a high school movie about a kid who doesn't want to be in high school.
Right.
I think, like, maybe another thing with this whole, like, give me more high school was, like, the Flash Thompson character.
Yeah.
Like, some parts I kind of like that he was this new take on a bully. They're at a preppy school that's, like, #1 in the nation for this math competition. Like, he's not dumb. He's on that math competition team. So you can't give, like, the dumb, tough jock, persona to him.
Right.
So he's still a smart version of a preppy bully, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, and that's fair. Although I will say they make a number of jokes about him being dumb, about him getting the wrong answer all the time and stuff like that. So, there is that scene where Spider-Man takes his car, and it's like a really nice car that's his dad. So you think, okay, you're really rich. That's why you're at this school. Like, maybe that's what they were trying to say with it. Like, but it's hard to tell.
That scene was kind of frustrating me too, though, because like the whole movie, like Peter wants to find a way to tell Flash that's him and Spider-Man are actually friends because they're the same person.
Right.
And he has the moment there to do that. He is dressed as Spider-Man. He takes his car. He can say, hey, Peter Parker's cool, by the way. And they pass on that opportunity. Like, they were trying to set that up the whole movie, and then they didn't take it. That made no sense to me.
One line could have a whole arc right there.
Yeah. Something I think that'll be a character they develop. I hope so, because that actor's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I will say for the most part, I was just expecting him to break me out of prison the whole time. And he forgot my cologne, too. Probably.
Another character I thought they probably could have done more with, or at least maybe I expect them to do more with, was Michelle. I liked her. Her use was very limited.
Yeah, she had those glimmers of interesting, where she would have those funny lines outside the Washington Monument, and just at the end, the very last scene where she's there with her when she's sitting at the table and Peter's like slinking off to the bathroom, and she was able to really add some interesting awkward humor to things. But it's still hard to tell though, who is she? Her name's Michelle, but she refers to herself as MJ.
Her friends call her
MJ, and
she has no friends.
But she has no friends. But it's okay. So you're Mary Jane. I don't understand. Where are you going with this?
I don't know if Marvel's hinting at that she's the next love interest, which I think that's what I anticipate her doing. I feel like they're playing out this arc of her, like, by the third movie, her and Peter realizing they like each other or something, which I respect that they're playing the long game there, but no need to make her Mary Jane or make people think she's like Mary Jane. Like, just be Michelle. She's kind of cool, different, unique take on her own made up character. Just leave that where it is.
That's for the comic book nerds.
Sure.
But even though Michelle was, in some ways, maybe a future love interest, there was a love interest in this movie. I don't know, she felt kind of flat to me.
She did. I think it was more of like a crush interest, I would say, than a love interest. Since they didn't spend tons of time in high school, we didn't really develop this love interest thing.
There was some stuff that I felt like they started but never really went anywhere with. I know Spider-Man. There was that whole scene, it was real awkward, and like, I know Spider-Man. That's how they got their invite to the party. It was never something that she ever like really pressed him on again or anything like that. Or even when, Spider-Man saved them at the Washington Monument, there was still never any like, hey, your friend saved me. And I also have to say, I really don't think I like her being Vulture's daughter.
I just don't feel like that hit for me. Like, I'm not against the idea if it actually served the story. It didn't. Like, it didn't increase Liz's investment in the story at all. Didn't increase like Spider-Man's invest in capturing Vulture or defending Liz. He never had to do any of these things. Didn't add anything to the story. I mean, a couple of things that it allowed them to do, they had already set up, or were going to be able to pull off those scenes anyway. Like there was, I think, a really cool scene that I really did enjoy. Michael Keaton, Vulture, finds out Peter Parker is Spider-Man.
Yeah. They
had this talk in the car right before the homecoming dance where he's looking back at him. It's kind of parts of it were shown in the trailer.
Yeah.
And you just get this really like evil adult speaking down to this kid. Powerful, cool scene, but you didn't need him to be Liz's dad to get that scene for me.
There was just a lot of connecting dots, a lot of leaps being made in that really short scene in the car for Vulture to figure out that he's Spider-Man. That's a lot of mental math that he went through in that short amount of time to be like, to go from you're my daughter's date to the dance to you're Spider-Man.
Right.
Like,
two things. You left the party early and you didn't go to the math competition.
Yeah.
Those two things.
Yeah, like I said, that I feel like that kind of that probably is another thing.
He hinted at the voice was kind of ringing in his ears, but that's still like a little cheap, I think.
Yeah, no, like I said, I think that was again just a bit of a leap, and I don't think for me it added up, and that's really what I almost maybe soured that twist the most.
Yeah. But what if they had done it earlier in the movie? Like, revealed that to us earlier. It could have, like, centered the movie around high school more and maybe given us the opportunity to pay more attention to this high school life, which I think we kind of wanted more of.
It would have upped the stakes as far as his relationship with Liz goes. So if there are these awkward fights that happen throughout the movie and it's like, well, I can't kill you. You're this girl's dad that I really like. That actually would have had some really high stakes. I mean, I feel like ultimately, for me, maybe they were just trying to say at the end fight scene, like that's why Peter Parker pulled him from the fire. I don't think that really had much bearing on it. Ultimately, I think it just maybe the level they were trying to go with it, or if it did anything on that kind of level. But even that, like I said, I don't think they really needed it.
Now, aside from that, I think a lot of what they did with Vulture was pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, I like that his motives were pretty small in nature. I mean, it was really just, he wasn't really like this evil guy trying to take over the city. I do think they're going to the Sokovia Bank or the alien event. They're going to that bank too often to find villains or to find motivations for characters. To some degree, I guess it worked here separately. They're maybe starting something new with these weapons.
I do find it a little weird that it was just like a regular Joe contract company that they hired to clean up alien matter, and then the government decides to step in later. Like, that seemed a little weird to me, but I mean, I guess they had to get the weapons, the first taste of the weapons in their hands before they started, going all evil and stuff.
But then I will say I'm glad that they kept him alive. Like, they kept him around. It's like Marvel has this history of like one-shotting their villains. It almost seems like they could be doing like a Sinister Six thing maybe in the future. They're playing maybe some long game or having some of these powerful characters that you've just spent, a movie with, being able to show up in other movies. I think that's more of a recipe for success down the line.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. Especially getting an actor like Michael Keaton. I really do hate when they go and they get these really great actors, they give really solid performances, and then, like, you're right, they kill them off and they're not there anymore, and that's it. It's like, okay, well, you got that one shot. But I do feel like if they can keep that recurring thing going, we'll see what they're doing in the next two movies, which I think we'll talk about in a little bit. It could really be interesting.
Well, let me ask this, though, Rob. Tony Stark, did he work or did he not work in this movie?
I mean, he worked as far as a bridge between the MCU and the new Sony Marvel partnership. I do have to say, the Papa Tony angle worked, but there were a couple scenes that really just kind of bothered me. Yeah. Like the scene where he was on the boat and he takes the suit and...
Which we've all seen in the trailer.
Yeah, we've all seen in the trailer. He's chastising Peter Parker for continuing this crusade against these guys. Revealing to him that he did listen to him when they told him and called the FBI. Didn't feel the need to let Spider-Man, and then gets mad at him when he continues. Like,
Peter keeps texting Happy and trying to get a hold of Tony, but he gets no response. And then they just say, "Well, I have been listening to you," but I never told you. Yeah. So I just left you dangling out there. And you wonder why the kid keeps trying to stop this from happening because you never told him that you actually were taking it seriously. So it's like you're mad at the kid, but you probably should be more mad at yourself.
Right.
And that was one thing too. I feel like every scene of Tony's was in the trailer.
Yeah.
And so I felt like it made every scene he was in kind of feel flat because you knew it was coming.
Yeah.
You knew the context it was being used in.
Yeah.
It was like, you're in the movie theater on opening night and it feels like you're watching something for like the 5th time.
Well, and especially when it's so obvious that they tried to sell you on something about the movie that wasn't as big of a part of the movie as they wanted you to think it was. Which, I mean, makes sense. They're still trying to get that Marvel audience to buy into this whole idea, so using Tony Stark, Iron Man to do that, sure, makes sense. It led to some really frustrating moments for me. I mean, some interesting comedic moments, especially with the Happy character, who ended up being a bigger role in the movie than Tony. So I think on that angle, like, Happy worked, and Tony did work to a certain extent, but overall, again, I'm not sure if it was something it entirely needed.
Yeah, I feel like you said it though. You good bridge, needed to happen to connect everything, but just some parts just, like you said, their effectiveness wasn't quite there. I'm trying to think what parts of this movie made it feel like it missed for me. One thing that I think is glaring in my mind is a muddled theme. I'm not sure the theme that they were really pushing on us, what growth Peter Parker was going through, because there was some powerful scenes that individually I really like, but in the context of the movie I don't understand exactly how they fit. The end scene where he's trapped, he's really scared, he's crying. I like that scene. I like the idea of this superhero really scared that he's gonna die. But in that moment though, he realizes he's Spider-Man. They have this shot where they show the duality of Peter Parker and Spider-Man. I am Spider-Man, and he finds a way to somehow get through that. That doesn't fit the rest of the movie for me. It wasn't like he was learning how to be Spider-Man this whole movie. He accepted he was Spider-Man. That was his thing. He didn't want to be Peter Parker anymore. Right. So if anything, at the end, Peter Parker needed to save the day, I think, in this grand scheme, not Spider-Man.
That's actually a really, really great point. I feel like since they had already set him up some in Civil War, going into this movie, you already knew certain things about him, and you knew that he was pretty proficient with his powers.
He handled himself against the best around.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty well. So in this movie, that was one of the oddest things, was in certain respects I felt like they were kind of de-escalating his powers, making him more awkward at times, or even the strength thing. I felt like there was just things about his character that they were kind of regressing. Yeah. And I'm guessing for the sake of this narrative that they were trying to tell, but it just felt so weird. So maybe if we didn't see him in Civil War, we would have felt differently about it. But I know for me, that aspect really bothered me.
Well, I definitely think if he wasn't in Civil War, those scenes work better. Yeah. And that's kind of a hole that I think Marvel's going to kind of find themselves in. Might happen with Captain Marvel as they try to introduce her before they go on to introduce her next movie. It might happen with Black Panther, where you've set things up, but then you want to kind of take it back. Because was this movie an origin story? No. But was this the first movie of the trilogy and they're still trying to teach you as an audience, that he's still learning how to deal with all this? Yes. So in that way, it still feels a little origin-y. It's origin-y and it is an origin in the sense where he's learning how to handle his powers. Right. It's the origin of that. It's not the origin of how he got the powers.
Right. Well, and even with that, is it the origin of the powers or is it the origin of the suit? Right. Because a lot of his learning curve is the suit. It has nothing to do with his powers. It's figuring out Karen and what to ask for and the hundreds of different types of webs that he now has control over.
I liked some parts of it. When the Ferris Bueller scene as he's trying to chase the car, I got some of the awkwardness in that scene because he is in a suburban neighborhood and they try to make this movie feel very Queensy. So it's there's no skyscrapers to shoot off of, so he can't really use his webbing as much as smoothly as he would like. I thought parts of that were cool, and there was the one shot of him having to run through a big field, a golf course, because there's nothing to shoot. And some parts of that stuck, but then again, other parts you're I know you're better than this. He's slipping on a roof and one person. In the airport scene, he was taking down Winter Soldier and Falcon, so I know you're better than walking on a roof.
Right, yeah, no, absolutely. And I heard some rumblings about the dissatisfaction that nerds primarily were having with the
comic book fans
were having with the absence of Spidey sense. In some ways, though, I kind of found the same frustrations they probably did.
I can see why they didn't acknowledge the Spidey sense, because with Karen going off and Spidey sense going off, it would have probably been confusing.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know how I feel about it because it is a classic Spider-Man thing. But
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know what it necessarily would have super added to the movie.
Maybe it's going to come down to, like, did you think the addition of the Karen character, if you will, was worth the trade-off? In certain respects, I'm actually going to say no, because I understand what they're kind of trying to do, because when you're making him kind of baby Tony in a way, like giving Spider-Man this suit that acts so much like the Iron Man suit, you kind of draw that comparison between them. But unfortunately, I think the comic book fans are right in this, and it is kind of draining what makes Spider-Man Spider-Man.
But what it allows, though, is like when he's trapped in that damage control facility, he's got somebody to talk to.
Yeah.
And so I think that's like, the one thing that you can always pull off in a comic book is the character can monologue or talk to himself in his brain. You can't do that in the movie because it makes you look crazy.
Yeah.
And so you have to have more for him to interact with. I think Karen allows him to do that. He can't talk to his Spidey sense, but he can talk to Karen.
Yeah.
So that kind of works. But, kind of another interesting thing with this Papa Tony, as you just had brought up, is, I kind of wonder, too, like, he's kind of taken on Spider-Man as a protege, and I'm kind of, he's at this feud with Captain America, who like did everything to defend his best friend, his protege, with Winter Soldier. I wonder if maybe Tony, like, something's going to happen with Spider-Man that's going to make Tony kind of connect with Captain America more, maybe, and that's how we can get them back together. We'll see.
Maybe, yeah. Well, Infinity Wars is right around the corner.
Speaking of Infinity War, Rob, let's talk some Phase 4.
Yeah, let's do it.
Spider-Man's going to kick off Phase 4.
Yep.
I feel like there's an interesting dynamic with Marvel and Sony that could be risky.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It really, I think a lot of it hinges on the success of this movie. I know they've said Marvel has creative control, but when Sony or any other major studio makes a lot of money, which I imagine this movie is going to do, they kind of lose their mind a little bit. And it's like, do we want Venom now? Green Goblin? And we want all of these things. And the director starts maybe kind of getting a little pushback, and then people start losing their jobs, and blah, blah, blah. It's just that spiral. I
mean, I don't want to be the pessimist, but, when this original deal was made, Sony had no leverage. Like, Marvel had no leverage. Sony just pooped the bed with Amazing Spider-Man. When it comes back around, they're going to need this re-up this deal. Marvel's going to need Sony now, because Marvel needs to continue with Spider-Man. Spider-Man's benchmarking their next phase.
Yeah.
Sony's got all the cards now. So, and Sony's starting their Venomverse, right? And they're doing these other movies, and they're going to have these other characters. They want to take Spider-Man back. They can pretty much take him back at that time. It'll be interesting. It's kind of risky to have Spider-Man start your Phase 4.
It's smart because he is a tentpole character that people have been wanting Marvel to have control of, I think, for years now. Like you said, I mean, when you get into bed with a major studio, like you tend to have to play by their rules a lot of the time. So, I mean, it could either make or break the MCU at Phase 4 at least. Yeah. And they're at big risks.
And just the other thing, like, I don't know, maybe I'm reading into it too much, but you could start to think, well, if Spider-Man's starting Phase 4, they might want him to start to become the face of the Avengers. Who knows who's going to live through Phase 4. Right. But maybe not Tony, maybe not Captain America. Those guys' contracts are up. They're all both kind of aging up there. They might want to be done, and it could be an interesting ride, I think, to eventually start off with a character who you're watching at 14 years old.
Sure.
Then maybe 10 years from now, kind of being the leader. Literally, we watch him become a man, become the leader of Avengers. That could be an interesting process to watch unfold.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What are your final thoughts, Spider-Man: Homecoming?
I think for the most part, I had a lot of fun. Big question I had going to this movie was, is there a way to make this actually feel different? This is the sixth Spider-Man movie. Is it going to feel like the rest? And there's enough there that I think makes it feel different. I wanted more of a lot of it. I wanted more high school life. I wanted more of the supporting characters. Tom Holland was great. I thought John Watts, surprisingly, maybe not surprisingly, but did a really good job directing this. Big step up for him. A lot to build on. I think you want to invest in the character now because I think he's going to continue to grow. This did feel like an origin movie without being an origin movie, and maybe they couldn't get away from that. Being the start of a new trilogy, they just couldn't do it. That's fine, but they got this one out of the way. I mean, even if you look at the original Spider-Man, with Sam Raimi, that one still had a little bit of a, I would say, hiccup, especially towards the the second half of that movie. I always felt like that movie was like one half really great movie, one half kind of meh movie. This movie in a lot of ways was the same. It makes me excited to see where they're going to go from here. Like, I am still a little worried about what the Marvel-Sony relationship is going to bring, and who's going to have to give and take and all that good stuff.
Tom Holland, you're right, is a really great Spider-Man. I love the innocence that he brings to the character, but I think he's going to grow into that cockiness, and it makes me excited for the future of this franchise.
All right, everybody, that's it for me and Rob. But now I want to hear from you guys. How'd you think Tom Holland did as the new Spider-Man? And did this movie leave you maybe wanting a little bit more? Let us know in the comments below.
Then hit that like and subscribe button to catch all of our upcoming videos.
Until then, this is Ray Rob, and I'm Ray.
I'm Rob.
This is good garlic bread.
Yeah, I think garlic bread would be my favorite all-time food. I could eat it for every meal, or just constantly without stopping.
Well, then you'd get fat.
No, why would I get fat?
Because bread makes you fat?
Bread makes you fat?